evening. The news gang is here. Tonight, back to the skies. Tough new rules in the air, or is it just hot air? We explore the new flight path into Kenya. Also on the show, dividing revenue or dividing Kenya. A set of formulas, but no single answer. Who is doing the math? On the memo, Jamila is back with a question. Are the imposing columns at City Hall the only straight structures left over there? Gashur is throwing yet another punch at the Senate, but will they get it? Diango is seeking for a formula on how to truly live with the new coronavirus. Yvonne is still away, and Kai Kai will be joining us from home as we roll out new ways of doing what we do. But there is a guest gangster on the show, Kipchumba Murkomen, who voted against a formula proposing to give money to his county. Will be joining him a little later on.
Contact tracing of the recent surge of infections indicates that our socializing without regard to protective behavior, particularly in an environment serving alcohol, is becoming one of the greatest risk factors in our country.
All right, that is actually where we will begin. The state of the fight against COVID-19. That's President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking there in the latest address on Monday, I think it was, and basically outlining new measures that included, for example, the ban on the sale of alcohols at restaurants and eateries at a time when the cases are increasing. Actually, today alone, 788, bringing the total number to 19,913, just about 87 shy of 20,000. Quite a huge number there. But Jamila, the biggest news today is the resumption of international flights, and there's a short list, and short here is not accidental. There's actually a very, very short list of countries that, basically are allowed to fly their passengers here and the vice versa. Very, very controversial, perhaps.
Yes, very controversial, considering that among that list, our neighbor Tanzania is not included. But CS Macharia today is speaking about now the resumption of international flights. Remember, 1st of August is the date, and the first flight out of Nairobi will be to London. Earlier on, we had CS Macharia speaking right here on Citizen during the bulletin, speaking about this and the short list of countries that include Canada and China and South Korea and Namibia and Morocco and Switzerland, who have been said to have mild to moderate community transmission. That's the reason why they were picked as the countries which can actually flying their citizens into Kenya. But of course, he insisted that the list can change depending on the situation in countries. We may have some that are not in this initial list that may make their way into it, in looking at how the cases will be in that country.
We can listen to him. We do have that soundbite.
Yes, we do. We can listen to him.
Passengers on international flights with a PCR-based COVID-19 negative certificate whose body temperature is not above 37.5 degrees Celsius and do not have a persistent cough, difficulty in breathing, or other flu-like symptoms, and have been tested 96 hours before travel, shall be exempt from quarantine.
Those conditions there, Joe, that the CS is speaking about, 96 hours you should have been tested. Your temperature should not be above 37.5 degrees Celsius. And of course, you should be coming from one of these countries that have been listed here. And of course, speaking about what happens if you have a flight past curfew, you would be allowed to travel so long as you have the boarding pass and your ticket. And the same thing if you're coming into the country past curfew time. So that's all and good. And we can't wait for 1st of August for that to happen. But of course, the issue of Tanzania not being included in the list is something that has a lot of people talking and asking, so is there a tiff between Kenya and Tanzania, considering the fact that the delegation to the funeral of the late President Benjamin Mkapa was turned back because of technical issues. And maybe some are saying it's because of what the president said during his speech on Sunday about how they cannot talk about what's happening in other countries. Not forgetting that the last time Tanzania announced COVID-19 numbers was in April 29th. And at that time, they had about 480 cases and 21 deaths. Since then, we've not had anything. All indications, the pictures we see from the country, that all is well. But beside that, the country is open. We're going back to international flights from 1st of August. But for me, one question that comes to mind is about now Kenyans want to travel to those countries and they don't have visas. We know that embassies are not issuing visas, let's say, to some of these countries across the world. Now that we've opened the flights to those countries, now we're going to be able to facilitate for people to be able to go if they don't have the documentation and they need it. I don't know. I think that's something we need to see.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Let me bring in Linus here. Obviously, there is no flight to and from Kajiado, where you and I come from, but a very interesting list there given by the government. And as Jamila was noting, Tanzania conspicuously missing, and yet we have Uganda, we have Ethiopia, we have Rwanda. Very, very telling, is it not?
Very telling and quite descriptive of the current state of affairs in terms of how we are relating with our neighbors. It is no longer a secret that the relations between Kenya and Tanzania could be going through a rough patch. There's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of suspicion between these two nations. We're yet to get the truth as to what really happened with the plane that was carrying the Kenyan delegation to President Mkapa's funeral. But when you look at this as well, you can't look at it and separate it with the current state of affairs on the COVID front in this country. The numbers are going up, and one would wonder, should this be happening at all in the first place? Is this the right time to open the airspace and to have flights coming in? I was listening to the cabinet secretary talking about COVID certificates and temperatures of 36 or 37. You know, so it is a free pass for the asymptomatic cases. One of the challenges that COVID-19 has presented is it's been very difficult to pinpoint who exactly is a carrier and who is not. The majority of cases are symptomatic. Now, just imagine flight of asymptomatic passengers, you know, who will obviously pass the temperature tests at the airport. I think what we are going through is still the same experiment of trial and error, which is why I think we are going to, just the same way we seem to have landed on the wrong grounds when it comes to the spread of COVID to the counties because of reopening in the 21 days ago. I feel we could pay a price for these international flights as well.
Wow, Gashuri, interesting that the flights are resuming. I mean, the CS talking about all these tests being done. I think it was 24 hours or something before someone travels. But we now know this thing is so easily transmissible. You could pick it on your way to the airport after taking the test. Some would say a very big risk we are taking here.
Yes, a very big risk, but also looking at the state of affairs, the economy is also at play. I mean, the discussion earlier on was whether the president would lock the country down again, which didn't seem very likely in my opinion, because the country is also grappling with tough economic times. So it's that delicate balance of lives and livelihoods, you know, keeping the economy running while at the same time making sure that Kenyans are safe and the curve is contained. But at the same time, Joe, Linus and Jamila, we are moving closer and closer to that question of personal responsibility ever so more, because the country and the government realizing that it is no longer possible to mark or to secure everybody at close range in terms of how they behave, whether they wear a mask, whether they sanitize, whether they move from one place to another. It's now a personal responsibility question. But hopefully that decision to allow international flights into the country will bear the necessary fruit, and it will not lead us into more infections. This week, actually last week I was in Mombasa, and I realized that local flights are working quite well, and a lot of sanitization. You have to wear your mask throughout the trip. I hope those personal and very individual responsibilities would be adhered to by every passenger on board. But more importantly, it's to keep listening to what the government is saying and to keep doing the right thing, and hopefully it's a decision that we will not come to regret later on.
I think to add on to what Gachuri said, Joe, about the economy, the minister spoke about tourism and how this would help boost that industry once more, considering the beating it has taken because of COVID-19. And I think the decisions made about the coming in with having been tested 96 hours and having temperatures not less than 37.5, I think it's to not have people come here and then told you have to be quarantined for 2 weeks before you're allowed into the country. And I think a lot of people would avoid that in terms of, let's say you're just coming for 3 days for a meeting, or you're coming for a week for a holiday, and then being told because you've arrived into the country, because it's times of COVID-19, you have to be quarantined for 2 weeks at a maybe facility you have to pay for, and then be allowed to come into the country. I think that's partly why this decision has been made, so that they can at least attract tourists once more and not keep them here for maybe 2 weeks as a quarantine period that is currently being used across the world.
But I think, Joe, the Tanzania question, I think it's something that the Kenyan government has been skirting around, not expressly saying what is or as is. But the truth is, you can clearly see that there's a problem there, that it is not one of the countries listed for those international flights. Tells everything that every Kenyan needs to know. And this has a reason, has a source. You remember that altercation between the Kenyan government and the Tanzanian government on the truck drivers and their state of COVID-19? That should have told us something insofar as whether the Kenyan government would include Tanzania in that list of countries that are allowed to fly their passengers into the country. And maybe it's a discussion that needs to now go past our borders and look at the whole East African region, and whether the East African region countries are singing from the same hymn book in terms of dealing with COVID-19.
And remember, Burundi is also not on this list, Joe and Gachuri and Linus.
Yeah, but isn't there another dimension to this? I mean, are we assuming, or have we talked to all of these countries that they're willing to let their citizens come here and go back? Because I think there's also that dynamic that people will be looking at Kenya and seeing how, right now as we speak, how exponential the growth in the new cases has been over the last couple of weeks. And actually, I've had Kenya being cited in different places as a place where the rise in the number of new cases is becoming a little bit alarming. So are we saying that these countries will be comfortable, or is it some sort of mutual agreement? That would be something that we'll be waiting to see. And Jamila, to your point, I think there's also a sense in which we probably are underestimating how much all these technologies we've been using, the virtual meetings and all of these things, have reduced the need for people to travel, especially for short meetings or conferences that people used to go for. They don't happen anymore, but they are happening on webinars and all of these things that are happening online. And it seems to me that international travel that is purely driven by meetings and conferences will actually reduce quite significantly. Linus, I would like us to move to something else. The president...
Joe, it will come with...
Yes. You can pick that up, but I wanted you to tie it in with the president's address on Monday and some of the measures that he outlined as we move the debate forward.
Yeah, I think Francis had mentioned personal responsibility, and I think personal responsibility will also attend to the international travel schedules of a lot of people. A lot of people will be making decisions based on what they think about the final destination. I've not heard of a lot of people wanting to go to Burundi, or the crazy need to travel to the United States. You do not want to be in Florida right now. So That you don't need a statement from the government to make that kind of decision. And that is the same way international travelers are going to look at Kenya. They'll watch these numbers, they'll watch the trends, and they will watch how things are happening. If we are managing the situation as we are trying to right now, it might encourage people or give them the confidence to come and do tourism. But the statement by the president this week, it was very, and I think the much awaited, because Kenyans wanted to know, okay, after the 21 days, what next? And the 20 days of the 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew. But again, the major blow is to the entertainment industry, the alcohol consumption in restaurants sectors, because they came out the worst hit in the new measures, Joe.
All right, we need to take a break. Gashuri, when we come back, you'll be telling us what alcohol has done. But we also need, to talk about Professor Magoha's statement today about the state of education, essentially pushing all learning, at least in the formal sense, to January next year at the very least. So let's take a break. We'll be right back with News Gang.